Oops, 10 a.m., not 10 p.m. Well, hopefully you guys didn't get confused because this is my normal streaming time. Hello, it's Margaret. You're on Booktube. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author and a very eclectic reader. And we're going to do a wrap up today, our first Wednesday wrap up of the new year. So, welcome everybody. I've got some books in oh, physical form and some books in share screen format because they were audiobooks or ebooks. So we've got, and I found one more after I made the thumbnail. So 16 books to get through today. Some will have longer commentary, some will have shorter. So lots of good ones on the list and lots of ones I'd recommend. So hopefully you're in for some good book recommendations for the year. I'm sure most of my audience does not need more book recommendations. They have an overflowing TBR list, but you know, it's the little bit that I can do. So if you're new here, hello. Please subscribe to the channel if you're interested in good books and reviews and tags and just sharing about each other's lives. I know it's been a very shock and awe kind of start to the year. So Booktube is where we come to make sure that we're all still there, make sure that we're still sane, and reach out to your community if you need a friendly hello. So that is what we're here for. I just say hello, Greg. Oops is right. Hello, Ellen, the frosty wasteland of the UK. I hear it's very cold there right now, so I hope you're nice and cozy. Yes, regular time. Excellent. And Lynn, salut. Ça va? So we're going to dive right in because I do have 16 books. So I took the time to make banners for all of these because after the live stream concludes, I go back and try to do timestamps. Thank you, Leslie, for setting a good example for people who like time-stamped categories of the video. And when I put up a banner, it helps me know when I switched to which book. So that helps me afterwards. So the first book is related to the Read What You Own challenge. So I have a lot of notes for this wrap up today, actually, and here's where I'll start. I had my last Wednesday wrap up early December, and at that point, I was still thinking that I would continue with the Read What You Own challenge, right? I hadn't yet totally tossed it out the window. So I tried to push on after the one purchase that was a friend's ebook. I hadn't put that in my rules, but I thought it's just one. I'll still try to read 25 before I buy more books. So what my strategy was, oh, I have audiobooks that I was like, didn't finish, but maybe I've already put in some time. I can finish those and get those under my belt. So the very first one in that category is What the Body Knows, a new guide to the new science of our immune system. And you like the little emoji I chose is a DNA strand. This is by John Trousdale, and it's read by someone else. It was very in the weeds. It's about the immune system. It's about the tiny, like, subcellular virus, bacteria level, subatomic level, like very, very detailed. And that is not my strength. So it was a little too in the weeds for me. But they did intersperse the technical details of the immune system response and structure with when and how things were discovered. So a little bit of medical history. And that part I could follow fine. So I liked that. And then when they started saying words and things that I was just like glazing over as an audiobook, it wasn't particularly sticking like snow on the ground in California. So, didn't really work for me. I do want to learn more about the immune system. So if you are perhaps more learned and lettered, this might be more accessible to you. The next short audiobook that I dove into is called Intimations. And this is a book by Zadie Smith. I've read one Zadie Smith before. It's The Fraud, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's sort of it's not a retelling, it's sort of a pastiche, but it's a telling of part of Charles Dickens' life through one of a real character in his life, and making up the experiences and the interior thoughts of this trial. It's very fascinating. I recommend The Fraud. The Intimations book that I read is much shorter. It's a collection of nonfiction essays by Zadie Smith. She reads it herself, and I really enjoyed it. So I got to hear her voice. So in The Fraud, her voice is not at the forefront at all. It's a historical fiction. It's diving into the 1860s and before in the main character's earlier years. And there's lots of different competing emotions, but in Intimations, it's just Zadie Smith. It's personal essays. It's basically her pandemic book. And she's thinking about how we relate to each other, how she feels about things. And I just thought it was really relatable, really, let's see, on my notes, I said personal, nice listening to her voice. And also listening to her voice because she has such an interesting accent. She's British, but it's not an accent I've heard before. It's a London, I think, influenced by Caribbean heritage and growing up. And she cuts a cool figure. So I really enjoyed hearing her take on, trends and current events and things going on during the pandemic, and really enjoyed listening to her audiobook, Intimations. Okay, give me another short audiobook for the Read What You Own challenge. How about Automatic Noodle? This is one that I know some other people have listened to, so not as obscure perhaps. It is a new release. It's by Annalee Newitz, and it's on the shorter end as well. And by the way, I listen to all these audiobooks as advanced listening copies through Libro.fm, which is the sweetest smelling purveyor of audiobooks in the world. So if you're looking for a great catalog of books, like all of the books in the world, basically, that are in audiobook form, then check out Libro.fm if they're in your country/market. But Automatic Noodle. So robots, let's see, cozy robot dystopian is what I would describe this as, and also an LGBTQ read. So I'd never read Annalee Newitz before. It's a new author to me. The cover was really eye-grabbing. It's basically maybe 60, 80 years in the future. Robots have rights in California, which is broken off from the US. There's been a big war. They're still second-class citizens, however, and so they start this shaky arrangement of starting a noodle shop together without a human overlord/overseer. And we get to know each of their backstories. There's 4 main characters, I believe, and they sort of have this daring do of trying to make it work while also getting to know each other better. And it's lovely. It's cozy. And the reason I say it's cozy, even though there are some big feelings in this, is that you definitely feel held and protected when you're learning about the big feelings and the big traumatic experiences that these robots may have had in the past. And that's what I think makes a cozy fantasy, since this falls under fantasy as dystopian. And yeah, just really inclusive, really transparent, really just lovely. And what's the word? Heart lifting up-ish, I guess. So definitely recommend Automatic Noodle. And let me just pause this for a second because I think I'm getting out of control on the comments. So let me catch up here. We have a happy new year. Yes. Hi, Albert. Hello, hello. Hi, Eva. Hi, hello, happy new year. All of the above. We have a cat paw. Hello, hello. And pastiche. Pastiche. It's kind of like a word like collage. It means it's taking lots of different things, but it has like a fruit tree is grafted on a rootstock. It's got a main base of inspiration, but then it's taking in all these other things, like it's a retelling or it's a different period or it's a different country, that sort of thing. And it's what we call books that are like taking characters that are someone else's, but making them do things differently, like sort of like fan fiction, but endorsed by the publishing industry. Hello, Jim. Happy Christmas over in Georgia. You may remember that I had work crews much of last year in the complex where I live. One of them is actually I can't remember if it's Russian Orthodox or a different country, but his name is Iosif, Iosif, and he's also celebrating Christmas today. So that's fun. I had Booktube real life moment where I could learn some things. Aha, Julie's got the real definition here. Pastiche, an artistic work in a style that imitates that of another work, artist, or period. So maybe derivative, but derivative, yeah, I suppose pastiche has a little bit of a negative connotation, but derivative definitely does. So I don't want to put any positive or negative vibes out there, just trying to describe that it's not completely original. It's taking something else as inspiration, and it's still a good time. Yeah, literary fan fiction endorsed by the industry. Popular new releases. One, when I read popular new releases, it's normally because it's on Libro.fm and I have an advanced listening copy. Yes. Exactly. Excuse me. And thank you to all who were hanging in there while I was doing my silent mime routine and getting better. I'm pretty much better now. There's still like the cough rattling around in there, but I think that'll probably be for a while. I don't know how to expunge the bronchial pathways. So, hello, Beth Ann. Hello. And I am home. Yes, it is the first live stream of the new year. I am home. I'm home. It's great. Yay. Yes. Oh my gosh. I had so much mail when I came back, which was lovely. Eva missed the quiet streams, but that'll remain a life's regret. Oh, it's fine. There's a group on Voxer that's like, yeah, 2026 is rude. I seem to be missing all the live streams. And, it's just a period of life. Just does this, just does that. It's all good. All right. So, automatic Noodle. That is the point at which I abandoned my Read What You Own challenge because that is when I went for the long weekend in San Luis Obispo, my hometown. And obviously, okay, so I fought against it, right? I went to Phoenix Books, where I usually at big hauls because they're a lovely used bookstore. Have been there since I was a kid. And it's owned by the child of my third grade teacher, coincidentally. But I only got one book or two. I think I got two books. I was like, that's fine. Here's the justification here. And then I went to, so I had like 3 days, right? So I had to like go to the places that I wanted to. The next day I went down to South County and I went to Nan's Pre-Used Books and Monarch Books. So I went to a used and a new store. And then I was just like, I see too many deals. I can't leave these. I can't leave these poor books unrescued. 1 second. Hold on. All right. Tissue applied. And yeah, so I couldn't get through enough short audiobooks in time before my floodgates opened, and I was just like, it's what's it called? Full season? Open season. Margaret's in her element. So I just abandoned the Read What You Own challenge on hometown territory. And look what I got. Okay, so one of the books that I got at home at that used bookstore the first day was this one. Okay, I'll put the banner up so that I know where I am. It's two books that I got that I had already read. One is just rescued from the house where it was stored, and one is bought at Phoenix Books. So this is Jane and the Man of the Cloth by Stephanie Barron. and it's the second Jane Austen mystery. So this is a reread. I didn't have the copy of the book. I mean, I don't think I do. Maybe I got it. Anyway, I read these and I think I either released them or I don't remember what the provenance was. But anyway, I saw this and I was like, oh, I really want to read this. This is from the thrift store, actually, not Phoenix Books. So I reread it and it was lovely. I love Stephanie Barron's Jane Austen mysteries. So if you want to talk about pastiche, this is sort of a pastiche, right? It's using Jane Austen as an amateur detective in her lifetime, where she goes about her actual real life visits and circle of acquaintances, but then also Stephanie Barron, who is a pen name of someone else, introduces murder and mayhem and piracy and all these good things, right? And so this one I had read before, and I knew the person wasn't the villain that we thought was, but I couldn't remember who it was. So it was just as exciting to reread, and I very rarely do rereads. So I just loved settling in, just as cozy as the cover promises, settling in with a good book. She's writing it. I was reading it. It's excellent. I can't recommend that one enough. It's a very good series. There's only like 6 or 7. No, there's more. 7 or 8 maybe. And the last one I still haven't read because I think I've been saving it. This is the last one, Jane and the Year Without a Summer. They switched the cover style. And this is about, of course, 1816, after the volcano went off and there was the not drastic, what's the word I'm looking for? Devastating effects around the world in terms of farming and harvests and all that kind of stuff. So I love that, actual historical stuff influencing the fiction. If you know, right? And then the second reread is just a book that I rescued from my house because I brought it down there thinking that I didn't need to read it. And Kim at An Oasis of Books will know of what I speak. It's a Mary Stewart book. Called Thornyhold. Look at that gorgeous cover. Yeah, so Mary Stewart's famous for both romantic suspense as well as fantasy. This is a little bit of both. And of course, it had been long enough since I read it that I did not remember what it was. But it's got all my favorite tropes. There's the supernatural. There's an inherited cottage in the rural English countryside. There's loners used to doing their own thing. And it's set post-World War II, like just immediately after World War II. And so historical fiction, supernatural, love story, obviously with Mary Stewart. And kind of reminds me of Kate Wilhelm in the supernatural part. So if anyone's a Kate Wilhelm sci-fi fan and psychological, testing the bounds of the real, you'd probably enjoy Thornyhold by Mary Stewart. Okay. So after these 2 rereads, when I was back in my hometown on a little getaway weekend, we sort of went random, right? So we weren't doing short audiobooks anymore, and we weren't doing the rereads. I sort of exhausted that. And I just thought this one would be a really cool audiobook. This is called Gathered: On Foraging, Feasting, and the Seasonal Life by Gabrielle Soberville. And she, I think, reads it herself. So, yes. Okay, there's lots of cool things to talk about in this wrap up. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Gabrielle Soberville, again, I got this through Libro.fm. I did not know about her online presence as the Chaotic Forager, but apparently she's got a good audience on Instagram and following her doing other things. This was a really interesting book, right? So a few of the reviews summed it up really nicely, and I'll try to pastiche them together. It's sort of a memoir. It's not a foraging guide. Obviously, she points to other resources for foraging, but it is a My World Fell Apart. and I put it back together using things that I had grown up with that I had become detached from, and gradually, sort of sewed myself back together with the threads from my childhood intuition and, setting up of education. And I really liked that. So there are memoir bits, but it's also more how she learned about the earth, how she uh, learned life lessons through foraging. One of the memorable scenes that comes to me right now is like forging community. And they were talking about how if you're a forager, you always have nuts gathered and not processed from like years harvest past. And so she came together with a bunch of people and they were all doing like an assembly line of nut processing, like cracking and whatever they were doing to preserve them and everything, and all different kinds of like nut cracking devices, including grandpa's goodie getter or whatever that really expensive one is. So she's talking about the sounds that were being heard and the talking and like just the community building through a joint activity that helps everybody. And I was just like, isn't that lovely? So that's the tone, that's the tenor. It's a really positive book, again, like a heart lifter upper, if you will, like Automatic Noodle, and set in our real world. She's actually, I think, mostly in Oklahoma. So I know Melissa doesn't normally have time to watch all my long videos, but I have a friend in Oklahoma, some of you may know, and it was just one of those things where, yeah, you don't have to live near a national park. She goes different places. She grew up different places, moving around a lot. And she just sort of listened and adapted and was open to finding and learning about what was in her environment, which I aspire to as well. So great book, really neat sort of memoir, and very positive to listen to. And there was some biblio-serendipity. So I'm going to cover this book later, but what I said in my notes was the biblio-serendipity piece. Okay. I'm trying to think where the note is, the quotation. Okay, let me get my phone. Sorry. I did prepare a lot for this, but this morning went by faster than I anticipated. So if I go to photos and I take a picture of the bookmarks, I just need to find hers. She does little exercises, and there's like 9 throughout, and that's really neat. I didn't get to do them because I was listening to this while I was walking or driving, but I put bookmarks in so that I would know how to go back to it. Aha, track 9, 9 minutes and 23 seconds. Talking about snowflakes here and being porous after I just read the parts about sintering. Okay. So what I thought was biblio-serendipitous, meaning the books that I'm reading are talking to each other, was when in this audiobook, she talks about snow somehow. And it related back to this book, Theory of Water, where she goes into a term that was new to me called sintering, S-I-N-T-E-R, which is where snowflakes come down and they're individual crystalline structures, and they are one way to survive flight or falling, if you will. And then when they hit the ground and they build up, they change their chemical structure and fuse together in a way that changes the nature of snow, right? Snow that is in the air falling is going to react differently than snow that's on the ground. And the snow that's on the ground does something called sintering, where it forms chemical bonds, or whatever they're called when it's just ice and ice, across. And Leanne takes that as a metaphor about finding community and forging bonds and networks. And I just thought that was really cool that Gabrielle talked about snow coming together, and Leanne talked about snow coming together. I was like, oh, that's so cool. So I really like when those things happen, and I try to make a note in case people are interested in that sort of thing. Let's see. So we had gathered, and then yeah, positive retraining. What I said was there's an interesting mix of like a get ready with me type of forager excursion and the memoir pieces. Yeah. Okay. Banner. Take that down and just catch up here. Oh, different. Let's see, Bethann. Let's see. Oh, Bethann says, I had to deal with contractors this morning. Don't want to work because home reno is stress. So I'm here. Already abandoned. 1 week into the year, it's abandoned. What are we talking about? The mail or something? I don't know. Bethann says, hopefully you'll motivate me to get back to work because home reno requires money. Yeah. Yes. How can you leave books behind in a world like this? So very heroic. I know. I'm a book rescuer. Maybe that should be my like tagline. Lynn says, I'm about to read Viviremos, Venezuela versus Hybrid War. It was published in 2020. I highly recommend, and obviously extremely topical. Yeah. Okay, good. I know Greg was just looking for Venezuela recommendations and got a good one from his local bookseller. So this is good to hear another one. Thank you. So this is Chaotic Forager, not Black Forager, which is Alexis Nicole's handle. She does have chaos in her, sayings and whatever, but different author, different person. Hello, Maggie. Such a pretty cover. I think you might be talking about Gathered, maybe not. Hello. And we're talking about snow. Oh, but still warm. All right. Might be the elevation over there. And Jim says, I get a lot of serendipity in reading. And Greg says, biblioserendipitous is an exceptionally good word that I will start using. Yeah. I tried to come up with a name with Brian because we were both sort of hitting up against the concept. And I guess that's what we just abandoned attempts and sort of went with that. And Maggie's doing dishes. All righty. Okay. So the next book is an author-tuber book. It's called My Husband Wants to Keep Me Pristine. I think it's right here. There we go. This is by Sam Wicker, writer Sam Wicker, and it's an ebook form. And I read this because other people were saying it's so funny, it's so hilarious. So I had FOMO, and I said, well, I have to pick up her book, right? So Sam has a big chunker fantasy book, and then started releasing romance novellas this last year, and I think has 2 out and 2 more planned, perhaps. And people were just having such a good time with them. I wanted to check it out too. So My Husband Wants to Keep Me Pristine. I did not understand what the title was about. So basically, it's blatant booktube influence. It's a historical romance. She does a great job with like the historical piece, but sort of making it fantastical. It's mainly about our 2 main characters because it's a novella, and it takes liberties to make you cackle. There's a simple world around which our married couple have been sort of tricked into getting together, and they have very different goals because they have very different understandings of the world. And we work through that in a sort of funny way where the woman is like hell-bent on having a wedding night, and the husband is like, no, I might be killed in war, so I need to keep you pristine. And it's just hilarity. It's very good comedy, both physical action and sort of side character comedy action, with also some like really good, solid feeling moments. So I love this for Sam, and congratulations. And I really enjoyed going through this romance novella. So if you're interested, pass it on. Booktube influenced me, and it's a great author tuber quick read. Let's see. Next one is a physical book. All right, physical book, and it's this one. Okay, so Next book is Remake the World by Astra Taylor. Essays, Reflections, Rebellion. So I thought I had lucked out. Let me even get my banner. When I found this at my local used bookstore, Backstory Books, because obviously the title appeals to me. And I didn't know anything about Astra Taylor, the author, but she had a lot of great blurbs. It's a Haymarket book, so that's always a good indicator because Haymarket comes out of the protest tradition in Chicago of the Haymarket riot in 1886. I've studied that. So I think they're pretty well linked. They have a great YouTube channel. If you haven't checked out Haymarket Books as a publisher or convener of panels to talk about important issues, definitely recommend. So it's a short, small book, and it's essays mainly around pandemic era. Let's see what my notes say. Okay. So if you are familiar with Jenny Odell and the How to Do Nothing read along that we did last year with Grace of Books and Cooks, it's a pretty similar voice. So Jenny Odell is an applied arts worker as well as sort of philosopher about art and society, right? Astra Taylor is more of a organizer who has a very good historical understanding of the forces arrayed against us and has some very original thoughts about how best to organize against them and remake the world. Ta-da. So my notes say incisive, contextual, because she has the history and like legal stuff at her fingertips, reasoned, and, just ways to make the US less crazy. It does say remake the world, but it is America-centered because, we're the ones causing most of the problems. And yes, just some really good essays. The reviews on Storygraph go into some of the things that people liked and have some good perspectives. Let's see. I did put some tabs in here, but I don't think I planned on sharing. Yeah. Here's a good quote. Page 39, Against Activism. Organizing is long-term and often tedious work that entails creating infrastructure and institutions, finding points of vulnerability and leverage in the situation you want to transform, and convincing atomized individuals to recognize that they are on the same team and to behave like it. So that's what I mean by reasoned and incisive. Like there's no flowery language, there's no technical jargon. She's just a very accessible writer of essays and offerer of ideas. And I think that this is sort of what I am more receptive to. And this is the more technical jargon that I am still plowing through and having a much harder time with. So just some radical transparency there. But yeah, really good. Enjoyed Remake the World. Recommend it. Haymarket Books, please. The next book is a historical fiction. So you may have heard me talk about Mary Doria Russell. That's the author. The book that I have is called Dreamers of the Day. It's a smaller volume, and I think it was published in 2008, so it's definitely backlist. Yep. And I really, really loved, note the camel. This takes place mainly in Egypt. You can see from the title, there's pyramids. The cover, pyramids. I really, really loved Women of the Copper Country, which was her historical fiction set in Michigan around the miners' strike in 1912, I believe, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, if I got that right. Copper miners. So she does a really great job jumping into a moment in history and really portraying the people's struggles to fight back, right? The powerless people's struggles to assert their rights, to affirm their equality, to shape their own destiny. And I really loved Women of the Copper Country. It was so good. So I got this and I thought it was like a steal. It's great, right? And then I think someone in the audience may have said, it was disappointing. And I could see what you might have been about. The ending is kind of weird. It's led up to, it's not a surprise really, but it's very unique. So what I'll say is she continues her lovely style. The author has evocative historical prose. She's really good with humor. Her dialogue sings. She makes these characters come alive with their, insecurities and their daringness and their, vulnerability. So I love that about her writing, about her characters. So the people are really real. And there's a real arc. So the character that we follow for a little bit of the history, we follow her from early 20th century where she's in a Ohio small town. Her father is an entrepreneur and gets taken advantage of. So very poor childhood. And she has a couple of siblings and a very strict mother. So the father dies. The mother brings them up with a very strict hand. And really, it's sort of an abusive relationship. So we have the siblings who straight away, it's like the first line of the book, die in the epidemic. So the 1918 flu epidemic, there's the war where one sibling dies, and then the after-war flu epidemic where the rest of her family passes away. Not a spoiler. So right away, we're shown a middle-aged woman who is freed of her constraints, let's say. She's made an heiress because of how well her mom has done being strict and all of her family being dead. And she has to really sort of start over with what is my life going to be. And so we get the 1920s, and she decides to go to the Middle East, where her sister went as a missionary. And she has a profound run-in and really starts her life over. And that's the real core of the book. Now, what I put on my note that I thought was extra interesting is that those of you who loved Manda Scott and the Boudica series, Manda Scott, one of my favorite books of last year, Boudica, the 4-book series, fantasy, historical fantasy. Both of the authors in their notes talked about how their books were, this book and those books, were a response to the 2003 Iraq War, and how being plunged into a war on foreign soil under false pretenses with little domestic support felt like a yank backwards and felt like the wrong side of history and, topical discussion maybe again. And so it's interesting that as authors, we can process our current events in this way. And I love how both of these authors have done it. So Manda Scott, I would say she takes a very, very well-researched world of the first century AD and talks about invasion from the native perspective and how they had their whole world set up. They had traditions, they had networks and communities and rivalries, of course. But then an outside influence comes in and just says, well, this is ours now. What are you going to do about it? The Romans. And there's a long struggle in that tetralogy of courage and fighting when you know you can't win, and just like what is the best for the people. And in this book, the dealing with the war mentality is one of the privileged going and being witness to the carving up of an area after World War I. And it's just a really interesting look. And I love how, as authors, we're playing around with our feelings through fictional characters observing what's going on. Yeah. So in the author's note in this one, Dreamers of the Day, Mary Doria Russell talks about, you can't understand what's happening now until you understand what happened back then with me. That's the character speaking. And yeah, because history rhymes and things have consequences and people remember. And so, yeah, it's just really valuable. And I thought this was great. The ending is a little strange, but it's unique, and I like when authors try different things, original things, and so I wouldn't let that stop you, because it's a very good created world, very great characters, there's a great arc, and it's funny, and there's a lot of uncertainty in it, and I love that about a good historical fiction, so top marks. Hold on a second. And sorry, Heather, if you're watching, I should mute myself while I'm drinking. Some people can't handle the noise of the swallowing or chewing, and I understand that. Let's see. So Mama Maggie recommended a book about Venezuela. Greg said that's the one the bookseller recommended. Maggie liked it. Lynn says, sorry, Verso Books publishing is great for leftist political books, mostly nonfiction. Verso, are they also in translation? I feel like I've seen them in translated books more often. But yeah, I do recognize the name and concur. I like the dynamite for the Remake the World banner. Yeah, see, judiciously chosen. I'm telling you, I took 10 minutes to fill in all of those little emojis. My husband wants to keep me pristine was very funny to me. Yes, agree. The swings back and forth between serious, thoughtful moments based on trauma and PTSD after war and spit coffee on the page funny are good. Yeah, excellent. Hi, Mike. Hello, hello. Maggie says the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic was so much worse than most people know. Yeah. And you really get the feel of that because not only is her, she goes through it, she has a terrible illness, and her landlady takes care of her. But then her mother dies, her sister dies, her brother-in-law dies, their 2 children die, like everyone just like wiped out. And I was like, wow. I don't know if that is generally known in people's family histories or it's too far back. I asked in my family and no one they knew was alive at that time. So there's no memory of who they lost. But funnily enough, there is memory of people before in other economic crises that were lost. So perhaps the epidemic wasn't as critical to my family. Okay, recommendation about the pandemic. If you can stand a pandemic book, well done. Yeah, another one, Pale Rider. Interesting. Greg says, my great-grandfather died of the flu. Yeah, and then Maggie says, everything is tuberculosis has renewed interest. Yeah, I think it's one of those books. I haven't read it. I think it's one of those books that really like breaks open something people haven't paid attention to. So I think it probably is a really interesting book. Hey, JC. I would come in and everyone dies. Yeah. Hello. Kappa says, I'm also a genealogist. I see it when I put together trees. Oh, see, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Our local school was turned into a flu hospital, then it became a community center, and then a church. I like that the building is still around. That is not nothing to sneeze at. I like when buildings stay around. Yeah, so many of my tree died of tuberculosis. Yeah. I had a funny moment the other day when I was thinking, consumption, what is that? It's not, because I have a piece in my book where someone mentions consumption because that's what it was called in the 19th century. And I was like, there's another word for it. What's the real word? And it took me like 10 plus minutes of going, what is it? What is it? And I finally came up with TB. I was like, Jesus. The white, what's it called? I forget what it's called. There's all these names for it because people didn't know what was happening, obviously. Our local community lost a third of the local families. Wow. Yeah, it's kind of like a decimation. You think of migration, all the people leaving Scotland in my books. Like, yeah, disease will do that too. War will do that. Plague, etc. No, but yes. Yes, sure. Why not? Why not? Okay, so great historical fiction, and then we're going to move back to... Oh, wait. I had a break in here, didn't I? Nope, it's after this one. Okay, we're going to move back to nonfiction. And this is a screen share, which is this one. So I don't think many people have heard of this. It seems like a pretty niche book. But again, Libro.fm. The Library of Lost Maps, an archive of a world in progress by James Cheshire. And it was read by a different narrator. So I did not get to hear his voice. In case any of you remember when I said in someone else's chat, someone said Tulsa instead of Tulsa. I just thought it was funny. So it's an English narrator, and they thought Tulsa was Tulsa, which made me laugh. But the greater part of this book. So definitely my nerdery. If you're in the same nerdery that I am, someone at University College London, who is a professor of cartography or geography. I can't remember his position exactly, but he's been doing it for 15 years. He stumbles across this map library, which not many places have anymore, and he goes in to explore. So he's always been interested in maps, obviously, as a cartographer, but he sort of takes these maps that he finds in the collection of his university one at a time and does a little deep dive on provenance, on discoveries, on map making technology at the different times over the 18th and 19th centuries and then 20th. And it's really pretty interesting. This is also where I learned that tectonic plate theory was only confirmed in like the 70s, which is crazy. So really cool nonfiction stuff for those of us who are not scientists. Very accessible. It's complete with references to Bloomsbury, because that's where UCL is, and the mention of the Society for the Diffusion of Useful Knowledge. Now, I definitely opened up a tab for SDUK, which was started in the 19th century, and it only lasted for a dozen years or so, but it was a group of Bloomsbury individuals, intellectuals, who were trying to democratize knowledge, right? So in today's education debate, it's radical, right? So one of the things that they wanted to democratize was how to read maps and having a map so you could know about the world in your home, kind of like a chicken in every pot. It was an atlas in every house. And Society for the Diffusion of Useful Knowledge, I just thought I need to use that title. And I was glad that they said it had, dispersed, it had broken up not too much later, because I was like, oh, I want to use this title. It just sounds so fun, right? So that was a neat discovery. And like I said, he goes into map technology, he goes into provenance, basically like World War II. There's a lot of World War II stuff in here, probably like half of it. And he talks about gaining knowledge when you take over Nazi maps, when you stamp it like a library and it says it's like the Reich symbol. Lots of interesting things when you look at maps and you know how to read them, not just here's the index and the A and the 6 box or whatever, but also here's where it used to belong. Here's where it was probably picked up. Here's why it probably came to us. And here are the inaccuracies, because people just sort of threw whatever they thought in there for mountains in West Africa, for example. Just like really funny and interesting things about maps. And so, yeah, definitely. Oh, and what's interesting even more is that this cover shows rivers. So if you look at this as an infographic, you think, oh, this is pretty easy when you use Canva, right? Well, not when people were doing this 100 years ago. It's an infographic map, or what he called thematic. Well, they were originally called monographic maps, and then he said now they call them thematic maps. It's the length of every river in the world, the longer ones, drawn to scale and then put in a circle so that you can see the relative lengths of the rivers. I thought that's really cool. That infographic, or something very similar to it, is on the journal that I'm using every morning and evening. It's at the top, and it's like a map background. And they just take it because it's in public domain and looks like a cool cover. But I connected my journal, which is just a fun cover, and this cover, and I went, oh, look, it's the rivers. It's a monographic map. Ah. So I love when I see something in a book that's just fun and interesting from the past and can relate it to now. Like, that was a fun moment. So highly recommend. Some of the reviews said he is a little bit absent professor, and if he'd thought about any of this at all, he would have realized, yeah, there's a lot of Nazi drive in map making, and so you'll find those in a lot of the maps that were in the collection. and not be surprised. But it wasn't off-putting to me. I liked how he sort of wandered and related and educated us as he went. So that was a really interesting one. Greg's got another flu book. Excellent. So if you're interested in any of these recommendations, be sure to write them down. And in case you don't know, when you live stream, the live chat is accessible on the page. And then when you finish the live stream for about 24 hours, it processes the live chat and it's not available, but it does come back once YouTube reviews it. So if you're looking for these titles and it's going by too quickly, just remember you can come back after a day and then check it out. JC says, this book sounds interesting. Is this the map book or the Dreamers of the Day book? I'm not sure. I have delayed too long looking at comments. Maggie says, fun fact, most of the Colorado hot springs resorts started as consumption wellness hospitals. It sounds like Australia. I feel like that's an Australian thing as well. Yeah, interesting. Mama Maggie says, I would like that one. Currently listening to a video podcast translated from Italian on pre-Roman empires. The bad AI translation is driving me crazy, but the information is good. Research for the Western Queen, which I guess must be a working title for Maggie's book. Excellent. I just wrote this book on my list to look for next time I go to my library. Yay. That's cool. Did dishes, sat back down, great books, the flu sucks. Yeah. I don't know if that's what I had. I'm going to see if I have 2 weeks to wait for a doctor's appointment. We'll see if there's anything left in my system that they can diagnose, but hopefully not. The map book that's on the screen. Oh, cool. Cool. Yeah. I just thought it was a really interesting cover and it drew me in, and it's my nerdery. If you know me, you know. It's a library. It's London. It's maps. It's history. I mean, there's like 5 things all at once that I love. So yeah, that was an easy yes. All right, now I get a little break. We're gonna take a break and take another sip of water and ask any upcoming events. I've got 2 to share. So if you have interesting things coming up, you want people to attend, watch, see, support, drop it in the chat. So I'm not sure about this because I have yet for Tasman to confirm, but I'm planning on doing a Climathon overview of the year. Tasman is the creator of Climathon, and she has a nice new, not a bingo board, but like a grid of all the prompts for Climathon 2026. And we shared both of our TBRs on Instagram if you're curious. So she may be coming on Friday or not, depending on her schedule. And trying to be flexible here. The next thing is an announcement for Black AuthorTuber Readathon. That comes up in February. So Beth Ann is going to be a co-host, which I'm very excited about. And I've reached out to some newer Black AuthorTubers to try to get some more names on our spreadsheet and more books read by Black AuthorTuber friends. So if you've got names, drop them in. If you've got new books, drop them in. The playlist for Black AuthorTuber Readathons previous is on my playlist tab, so you can go check that out, and the link for the spreadsheet will be on there. The announcement should be coming up Friday, January 16th to try to get people aware before we start. We'll have a kickoff, we'll have recommendations, we'll have features, and just to get people aware of Black AuthorTuber channels and books. And it's all genres. So if you think they only do fantasy or only do romance, you're wrong. There's literary fiction, there's sci-fi, there's poetry, there's memoir, there's all the things. So check out the spreadsheet and you won't be disappointed. If you need more book recommendations. And then the last one, which I have a link for, is one I just shared on my posts. It's going to be a panel that I'm on, and it's run by Anita. Just pop that in there. January 17th, which is a Saturday, I will be on a panel speaking with 4 or 5 other historical fiction fantasy authors, and we'll be talking about writing historical stuff, which is really fun. So that is the link for Anita at AF Stewart's. She's the convener, and we'll be chatting Saturday, January 17th. So that is my upcoming event. So let me check in with others. Oh, yeah. Greg, put your link in. Yeah, it looks like a compass. Yeah, right. You recognize a compass. I don't know that Gen Z and after would recognize a compass. Just saying. Hi, Andy. Hello. Greg's got a 1-year Booktube anniversary coming up. He's going to be interviewed. It's going to be a ton of fun. Let us know when that is or put the link in, please. Okay, so this is the one reservation, and it could be my fault. Catpot asks, what did you think listening to a book about maps? Did you miss the visual element? So number one, I will say they did a very good job describing what the maps look like in audiobook format, because I think they may have had like a color insert section or something in the book. I don't know. But they also had what they call bonus materials. And I clicked on it and it took me to Safari, and then it just did nothing. So it didn't let me download the PDF. It just opened up a Safari page every time I tried it. So I could go onto Libro on my laptop perhaps and try to download it there if it's accessible. But I didn't get to see the bonus material, so maybe I haven't finished reading it. But yeah, good point. Mike says, I have a Q&A video going out tomorrow to celebrate 500 subscribers. And now it's 6:40. Jesus. With Steve Donahue interrogating me. Yes, he's going to pepper you with questions. That's great. Feel free to drop. Oh, wait, maybe you don't have a wrench. Now you have a wrench. You have the power to put a link in the chat. Thank you for being here, Mike. There you go. Congrats. I thought you had been around longer. I think that's a compliment. Sounds good. Beth Ann. Black Author Tuber Readathon. Yeah, pump it up. Aggie says, I'm working on the Giving Yourself Grace tag you mentioned the other day on Breaking the Block. Oh, lovely. Okay, so I did this. This was my last live stream of 2025. I did it on New Year's Eve. It's a tag by author Morgan Lee, who has a great channel, who's trying to boost the channel again. So go over and subscribe because she's got great stuff to share. And I just mentioned that I think only a few people had done it. Morgan made it up. Rachel did it this year, and then I did it. So I'm trying to spread it to different writing communities. We all have sort of little bubbles. So if you are curious, if you're a writer, if you want to talk about your writing process and like how there's ups and downs and how you cope with that, it's a great tag with great questions. So yeah. And Breaking the Block is the Sunday morning favorite of my writer podcast to tune in on, which Maggie is a frequent guest on. So I love it. All right. So I think Greg put up his link to the anniversary stream if you are curious. Cub Scouts use compasses also. Okay. All right. So some of our youngins may have experience with compasses. Excellent. Maggie says, I was also asked by a friend to read the second season of The Moon is Waxing and the whole of How to Become a Crazy Cat Lady to Survive the Zombopocalypse for my writer reading podcast tag. Oh, nice. All righty. Maggie says, I love Anita's content. Yeah, she is great. She does mostly author content with like very occasional book. So I am more book, less author. She is more author, less book. She's got a lot of different genre pans in the fire. So I love it. Anita's great. Catpa says author tubers, etc. under 1K. Oh yeah, I think Sam is organizing this. Author tubers under 1K subscribers marathon. Contact Sam. Yes. I just needed to keep reading. For more info, there's also an infographic on the Google page. Excellent. And Google page. There we go. So spreadsheet, if you're an author tuber under 1,000 subscribers, maybe it's an ongoing thing, or maybe you'll catch the next one. So great resource to share. Yay. So thanks, everybody. Continuing along. The next book is a physical book, and it's one that I showed you later. It's called Theory of Water, Leanne Beta Simpson. Now, I tried really hard to find a pronunciation of her middle name. Most people don't say it, or the one that I heard say it was Betasamose, and they didn't even pronounce the K. And I'm like, what is happening? So I apologize. I did really try. I looked at several interviews with her, and people just say Leanne Simpson, which is a cop out, and which did not help me trying to pronounce her name right. Theory of Water, Anishinaabe Maps to the Times Ahead. So I was very excited to get this book. This is a new order online. And I think I got it through Black Walnut Books in Minnesota to support a local Indigenous-owned bookstore. So a double whammy. Let's see. So speaking of maps, Theory of Water. Now, what I expected when I went into this was a sort of mindset shift, right? So when we're talking about maps, we think of the land as what we know and the ocean as what we don't know because we don't have a connection with the ocean anymore. But what I read a long time ago sort of piqued my interest in this, in that different cultures, for example, Polynesian explorer cultures, were much more comfortable with the ocean. They explored on these boats, like we saw in Moana in the Disney movie, and they knew currents, and they knew navigation, and they knew wave patterns that I could only dream of. And that's what I was sort of expecting, is more about how water behaves and how we can learn or like use metaphors for that. That's not what this was at all, but I liked what it was. So Theory of Water is, okay, a lot of going back into this, but in a more relatable way. If you think about emergent strategies for organizing against the terribleness that we have now in our political system, this is Leanne Simpson's way of imagining how do we organize in a way that's true to our culture, the Anishinaabe culture. A lot of the book, she references an elder in her community that she lost a couple years before, and how she was dealing with the grief of that, remembering his lessons, honoring his generosity and how he lived his life. So there's a lot of that in there. It's not sad, but it is reflective and sets the tone for her processing and her shifting her mindset, right? So it's about envisioning the theory of organizing and community building differently. So it's how to be anti-fascist in a different way. I have several quotes for this one, but I can feel that I'm going to need to, I'm going to mute myself because, yeah. That's for you, Heather. All right, I'm below the map here, the banner. Anti-fascism differently. So I'm going to read some quotes that I thought were particularly illuminating. First one is page 67, so I need to find my tag for that page. 67. This also has a little personal link. So, Theory of Water. Capitalism had already brought Champlain. That's the first sentence in the paragraph. And here's the personal link. Catpaw, genealogist. My grandpa did genealogy, and he had traced Pinards all the way back to French Canada in the 16th century. And the fact that the head doctor on Champlain's ship was a Pinard. A little Aubrey Maturin sort of real life Pinard history. And I think my grandpa was pretty proud of that. We're connected to an intrepid explorer. But then I get to hear about what Champlain brought to the area. Bring capitalism to the area. Capitalism had already brought Champlain and a host of other invaders into our home in search of capital in the form of white pine and timber, beaver pelts, minerals, and farmland. By 1833, in Kina Kichi Nishnabeg Ogamig, the place where we all live and work together, my ancestors were acutely aware that white people were not interested in sharing a rubric of care or the welfare of any living thing other than themselves. I imagine this selfishness would be shocking and laughable in the same way it still is today. Just one of those things where you're like, wow, okay, so we talk about pre-contact civilization. 200 years into the contact, they knew, the Nishnabeg Ogamik, they knew, okay, they're not doing things our way. They're not interested in learning our way. And yeah. Cameron Lake, she's talking about different locations. This is the map to why, standing on the corner of Pinery Road and Concession 11. There's that language already, the name for it. I felt lonely, in spite of clutching the map to the door of no return. That's another book. And thinking alongside Dion Brand. So, yeah, thinking about capitalism, thinking about invaders, thinking about community and selfishness and history and legacy. That was a good one. Presence, 84. Presence. A few years ago, the two of us were driving around the north part of Stony Lake just to be there. This is Doug, this is the person who passed away, the elder. He talked about how this used to be an area where deer would gather for the winter. He would stop the truck periodically and we would walk across private property and alongside fancy houses, feeling both in awe of the architecture and humiliated, angry to be trespassers on our own land. One time we saw a wolf on the ice. As I write, I think this is the sort of sentence that will likely get edited out when I read through this later, because I have nothing else to say about the wolf or seeing it. It is a clear memory, though, of Doug and me, stopping the truck, looking out on the ice for nothing in particular, and seeing another being dispossessed and humiliated, also still here, moving over thin ice and private property, wondering what to do next. So I really liked that moment, the self-awareness of it, the presence of it, and the memory. Holistic Wisdom, page 96. So, this is a good one. When we're talking about water, she emphasizes how water goes everywhere, chips away at everything, doesn't give up, goes into the crevices of rocks and splits great boulders. The power of water is that it never stops and it goes everywhere and is all connected. And a lot of time we don't study that in our Western study of water. So she's talking about the biology, the life cycle of eels. And I know that I read somewhere else, I think it was in the seaweed book for Climathon last year, where they talked about eels going to the Sargasso Sea, which is like this big floating marine plant island, basically, where they magically procreate and no one's seen it happen. And then, like, just like birds, migrate whole oceans away. So they come to the Great Lakes, and the Anishinaabe people knew that and had it as part of their seasonal calendar, cultural calendar. So she names off all the places. Jackson Creek, Chemong, Buckhorn, Pigeon Lake, Sturgeon Lake, Cameron Lake, Pinery Road and Concession 11, Burnt River, Cameron Lake, Trent Severn Waterway, Lake Ontario, St. Lawrence River, Gulf of St. Lawrence, North Atlantic Current, Sargasso Sea. Michi-Saagig Nishnabeg worlds were enmeshed with the world of the eel. Capitalism all but ended the world of the eels in Nishnabegaki, and this occurred within the span of my life. What I know now about eels signals the danger of dividing knowledge into disciplines, geographic regions, time periods, and particular struggles. Empire and capitalism are global, and when knowledge is enclosed, it is incomplete. I thought that was really good in terms of, we talk about holistic knowledge, And this is another way of pointing that out that I was receptive to. I could really understand. 2 more. All right, so page 117. If you were here for Agitation August and you caught the last discussion we had, which was with Marcy from, what's her channel called? It's not Brown Girl Book Club. She's in the Agitation August playlist, and we talked about We Refuse, which is a book about Black history and refusing to basically do what the state wants you to do, which is excellent. And the energy from that book, I think, is definitely encompassed here. Page 117. So she's talking about a book by William C. Anderson called The Nation on No Map, Black Anarchism and Abolition, and sort of relating the Anishinaabe struggle to the Black struggle. In his book, Anderson asks us to consider a vision of politics that, quote, no longer has the state as its object or horizon, and eschews the calcified forms of politics as usual, where the state is no longer the horizon of possibility or the telos of struggle, end quote. She says, this is a relief to read, even as it also marks a lonely path. This vision of politics means no more apologies, no more royal commissions and national inquiries, no more Assembly of First Nations, Indian Act, self-government agreements, rights, court, no more, no more, no more. No more begging neoliberalism for recognition. No more begging for charges and convictions. No more being bound up in the cyclical terror of never-ending court cases, negotiations, and research projects so tightly controlled that the predetermined outcomes include pacifying resistance. It is a relief, and it also places me on a different trajectory from many others engaged in Indigenous struggle. She goes on from there, but I found this really impressive because she's saying, take the emergent strategies, practice the new world. The state is not the end-all, be-all, end-all goal. It's not the final arbiter. There are other ways of doing things that might be more productive. People can engage with the state. People can fight those battles. Some of them are necessary and very important. But she's relieved to have someone else describe We Refuse energy. And I really connected with that. I thought that was cool. And then page 186, and then I'll go back to the comments because I don't want to miss what you guys are talking about. I had another biblio serendipity moment. So it's talking directly about the book. She's talking to Andrea Ritchie, the editor of Practicing New Worlds. I told her how I saw the emergent strategies she wrote about in Practicing New Worlds inside Anishinaabe thought too, even inside my own writing and that of others. And she describes these things. And I was like, wait, I'm reading that book too. That's so crazy. So it was hard to get into. I'm not sure why. Maybe because of what I thought it was and what I wasn't sure of. But when I got into it, it was very readable. It connected with a lot of things. It resonated with a lot of previous learning, current learning. And so, yeah, Leanne Simpson. If I don't need any more, it's just to look at the tabs. So yeah, really good and useful. I really like these 2 books in concert. They're really good, and I'm still struggling through this one. So valuable, but struggle bus. What can I say? All right, let me come back to the chat. All right, Maggie's got to go. See you later, Maggie. Thanks for being here. Okay. So we have more information. The under 1K subscribers marathon, February 8th to 15th. Great. I think maybe it's every month. Thanks for beating me to the punch. Excellent. Be blessed and happy day. Hi, Julie. Hello. Gosh, this is enjoyable, but I must sign off. I'll be team rewatch for the rest of this live. Hopefully the banners and the timestamps will help you find your place. Team Compass. I like it. We're not old. We're just informed. Cat Paw says, I love the pointillism painting on the cover of the Theory of Water book. Yeah. I have been fooled before in thinking something was pointillism. I don't know if this is beading or paint. I mean, it's obviously not raised, so it's not anything itself, but I don't know if it's a photo of... It might be beading, because that's one of the arts of the indigenous communities that they have a lot of traditions in. Yeah. Yes, the wolf passage. Yeah. Just like a good connection of feelings. I loved it. All right. Theory of Water. Excellent book. What do we have next? Maybe this will help. Okay, so this is one of the new books that I bought. And I'm going to give this to a friend. So if the friend is watching, they're going to get spoiled. But maybe this will help. How to Feel Better When Things Stay the Same by Michelle Rial. So Michelle Rial is an artist. She does infographics, as indicated by the cover. But she's also a disabled chronic illness sufferer and processor. And she brings that to bear in this book. So look at the title again with that knowledge. So my notes say it's illustrated. It's an easy read. It's got cute moments. It's got dark humor. There's profound things to sit with here. It also deals with grief and just really thoughtful. So she's got lots of illustrations that are ways to sort of process feelings and obstacles. And there's some really funny ones, and there's some really like, oh yeah. And then she has interspersed with little essays that are just, I think, 4 pages. Just like really creative. And especially towards the end, she's using real life objects, like there's diagrams. She's using like objects to make infographics. I thought that was really creative. There's a cheese, there's a cone. Just in an effort to get people to lighten up about things that are often very heavy on their heart and connect. And I really liked that. And the one quote I'm going to share from this is the definition of dictatorship. What if you could change one thing? Does this mean we should be vigilant all the time, always? So attempting this kind of vigilance puts a lot of pressure on past you to be retroactively in control and future you to be more in control. And being fully in control is impossible unless we're talking about a dictatorship. And what is a dictatorship if not a semblance of control with absolute madness beneath the surface? So, yeah, I just thought that she's very, what's the word I'm thinking of? Compelling as a writer, even though she's using simple terms and not going into detail about her own experience, but just processing. And so if you ever feel like you need someone to help process or just like sit with a heavy thing, I think this helps lighten it a little bit. So I'll be passing that on. That was a good read. And then a book you've probably all heard of. There goes a candle. Ugh. Sticky is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. The Japanese Art of Decluttering and Organizing by the one and only Marie Kondo, or KonMari. So again, many of you have probably seen this book. Many of you have probably seen Marie Kondo on the Netflix specials. She's had several. There's a new book coming out that's about like more philosophical underpinnings of tidying. She describes a little bit of her influences being when she volunteered at Shinto temples around Japan, and how the essence of being in all things is one of the things that she takes to heart with tidying and treating your things a certain way. And I thought I had read this, but I had not. I think I just skipped straight to the Netflix special, which is not like me, but that must be what happened because I don't remember a lot of the stuff in here. And it's interesting and possibly useful to many people, but there are still some things in here that were not satisfying or did not resolve the main issues for me with decluttering. So you may have heard me talk about decluttering. I did a lot of it last year in preparation for the renovation. And yeah, I can just read the first 2 quotes that I outlined here to tell you why I find it not a resolution for me. So page 59, what to do when you can't throw something away. My criterion for deciding to keep an item is that we should feel a thrill of joy when we touch it, spark joy. But it is human nature to resist throwing something away, even when we know that we should. Items that we can't bring ourselves to discard, even when they don't inspire joy, are a real problem. Yes. How do we address that? Human judgment can be divided into 2 broad types, intuitive and rational. So she says it's not wrong to hesitate. Consider carefully why you have that specific item in the first place. There's not enough. There's like half a page of consider, and I need more help than that. So if she is ever planning to do another follow-up, that is, how do you deal with holding on to things that you want to release to a better home and a higher purpose and not give up on? I think that's my issue, is that I don't want to just throw things away, certainly, or even recycle. I want to lead them to a better life. And often I can't find that better life for those things. And so they just sit there in the hallway. So that's a big thing. And then the second quote is about books in particular. If you missed your chance to read a particular book, and this is something I commented on during the Women of Words live stream yesterday. If you missed your chance to read a particular book, even if it was recommended to you or is one you have been intending to read for ages, this is your chance to let it go. You may have wanted to read it when you bought it, but if you haven't read it by now, the book's purpose was to teach you that you didn't need it. There's no need to finish reading books that you only got halfway through. Their purpose was to be read halfway. So get rid of all those unread books. It will be far better for you to read the book that really grabs you right now than one that you left to gather dust for years. So, what do you guys think of that one? Oh, I didn't put it up. And the emoji here is the little laundry basket with folded clothes. I hope you appreciate that. Yeah. What do you guys think? When I look over books, especially again, now that I'm back home, I look over them and I think, am I ever going to read this? Is this ever going to be useful still? And, oh, this one didn't come off as nicely. I hate these tags. If I still have a, yes, this could be really useful, I don't want to give it away. But there's got to be especially with fiction books, there's got to be a term. I asked the ladies yesterday on Women on Words, what do you call a book that if you look at it on the shelf, you think, I just don't feel like it. You never feel like picking it up, but you don't want to let it go in case you have to buy it again. I don't know. So I'm sitting with this. We'll see if I pass it on. All right, Ellen's got to go. We'll catch the rest on rewatch. Oh my goodness, it's an hour and a half. I thought we were like at 45 minutes, so I am in La La Land. Thank you for staying so long, friends. I did not even look at the time. Cat Paw says, I will refrain from commenting on that because that would demonetize you. I have opinions. Oh boy. And Beth Ann says, OMG, get rid of unread books. Girl, no. Exactly. Rude. Yeah. Cat Paw says, it's an entitled, minimalist, uncozy view of life. Mike says, I have some issues with that approach. I know. And I don't want to take it out of context. I know people say, she says, 30 books is plenty for like the books that you love, you want to read again, the books that you're going to read next. And obviously for bibliophiles like us on Booktube, this is where we find our joy. This is where we are lit up in our brains in terms of possibilities and hopes and plans and community, right? So I don't think she would say that that's bad. I think that, this would be your main focus of your house or your home. But just the weird, like, I can't exactly fuse the two ideas. The one of things have feelings and they want to be used and be in service. Okay, these are serving a purpose. Like, I have hopes and plans for them with letting go of things. And I think life would be easier if I could let go of things easier. But the old pencil sharpener that doesn't work too well anymore, like, someone could sharpen that. Maybe that's what's wrong with it. I don't have the expertise, so I want to give it to someone who might use it. I'm going to bring it to scrap. Or the shirt that shrunk a little bit, like, it's still a great shirt. I almost want to keep it and just have like shorter sleeves, but someone else who's actually a small will probably enjoy it just as much as I will, right? But I don't want it to go to the landfill. So where do I give it to as a thrift store? These sort of things of like ethical consumption really stop me from just being able to let things go. So maybe the solution for me is not letting it into the house in the first place, because then I don't have to do so many decision-making points of letting things go. But yeah, I'm sort of toggling between these two, trying to find a center for myself. Greg says, I addressed some of my philosophy of buying and collecting books in the Bookaholics Anonymous tag I posted this morning. Yes, it's on my watch later list. Cat Paw says, I spent 2 years looking at a book, picked it up 3 times, couldn't get into it. Forced to Charm. Loved it. Yeah. Yeah. And I like the idea of like, there's a time for everything. Maybe when you read it the first time, it's not the time. Maybe when you read it the second time, it is. I like the space of that flexibility. It just runs into problems with space. Mike says, maybe the book to let go of is the tidying one. Well, that's one solution. Cat Paw seconds that. All right. So next book is one that I listened to in hybrid, and there isn't a short person emoji, so I came up with a ladder. I hope that's okay with everybody. Coming up short. Oh, I was going to link to the channel. I put it in my notes. So let me go do that. This is a book by Robert Reich. You may have heard me talk about him before. He has an organization called Inequality Media, which might be a separate channel, but I will direct you to his channel because I think he has everything on there. He is a lifelong economics activist, and I picked up his latest memoir. He's had lots of books, but his latest memoir is called Coming Up Short. And this is a play on words because he has a condition where his bones stopped growing when he was still a kid. And so he's 4'11", as he says in the book. And so he explains that as something that affected his whole life. But also, he was free and he was supported to dream of having an influence, having opinions, being a leader. And that is what he has gone on to be. I love Inequality Media. I watch all their videos. They are about educating people in an accessible manner with graphics, with cartoons. He also draws cartoons, which is very cool. About issues of the day and especially inequality. So Coming Up Short is both because he is known for being short, but also because he says his America, from when he started out as a baby boomer to now, has been about the receding of equal opportunity and the expansion of inequality. And he has some really, really good quotes. So he was deemed too radical for the Clinton administration. He was in the first Clinton administration as the Secretary of Labor, so he's been in the cabinet. But most of his life, he has been a teacher in universities at Harvard, at Brandeis, and at Berkeley. And there was just a movie put out called The Last Class, where it's sort of a wrap up of his teaching career and what he spent most of his life fighting for and attempting to engage with. I feel like his voice is very close to that of Jane Mayer, who I read the book Dark Money by many years ago now. So I don't remember much of the details, but I just remember it being very profoundly motivating, very well researched. I think that was the first place I heard of the Powell memo. People in the United States, if you haven't heard of the Powell memo in the 70s, that was the beginning of the conservative wave and Reaganomics and everything that has come up since then that tilts the playing field to the hands of the wealthy, the team of the wealthy, if you want to stick with the metaphor. So another great book and sort of akin to this one, I would say. There are a lot of name drops in here, but they're not annoying or obnoxious. He says he met John Maynard Keynes. He says he talks to Alan Simpson. He has these people that he's liaised with in different administrations, in Congress, and he talks about them honestly, openly, a little comedically. He talks about how they connected and how they were very different and how they would have debates on things to illustrate his journey of how he thought about the issues. He's very grounded. He's very direct. He shows his exasperation with current things as well as past mistakes he sees people making. He's very honest. It's very clear analysis, like I said, very accessible. And you know what? I'm sorry for those of you who like them, but there are no graphs in this book. This is the layer of graph that I can get behind. There are no complicated graphs in Bob Reich's book, and I appreciate that because I just breeze right past them. So that was good. What else do we have? He talks about the 1964 Berkeley free speech movement and puts in the quote by Mario Savio, who I had not heard of. So it's interesting to learn this stuff because this is when my parents were young, but they haven't related this to me, so it was neat. I think this is also neat to read after reading John Lewis's book. We talked about the 60s and what was going on mainly in the South. And this is Bob Reich talking about what was going on in related movements and sort of like adjacent movements, but in the Northeast and then the West Coast and DC, of course. I had a biblioserendipity moment when he talks about the 1964 Port Huron Statement, which was a student movement in the University of Michigan. And there was like a, manifesto read out by none other than Tom Hayden. And I thought, I know Tom Hayden. So I picked up Tom Hayden's edited book of Irish Hunger. And I think it was a couple years ago now for the Irish Readathon. It was so good. So lots of different Irish Americans talking about the legacy of the famine in their families, in their careers, in history, just like really well thought out essays. And that was the first I heard Tom Hayden because he's before my time. So yeah, Tom Hayden, actually kind of a big deal. And I read his book and then I saw his reference, just small reference. Also biblioserendipitous moment was, oh yeah. So I don't have this book in front of me. Actually, I do. I haven't brought it back to the library yet. The biblioserendipity was with Remake the World. Oh, let me look this up. Okay, this was a good quote. I have 3 missed calls. Wait, page 106. Okay, where is it? Oh, maybe I did read. Okay, so I read the first 100 pages from the library book, and then I switched to audio when I was driving. So let me get the book. Here it is. So you could see he's not to the shoulders. I think that's Clinton in the picture, but memoir by Bob Reich. And 6. So early in his career, he was at law school with the Clintons. He met them both there at Yale Law. Where's the legal fictions part? Of nature. He worked in the Gerald Ford administration. He clerked for Supreme Court Justice. Here it is. He talks about Douglas as a justice. The justice who wrote in the 1972 case Sierra Club versus Morton that any part of nature feeling the destructive pressure of modern technology should have standing to sue in court, including rivers, lakes, trees, and even the air, because he reasoned if corporations, which are legal fictions, have standing, why shouldn't the natural world, which actually exists? I just added that last phrase. But yeah, and that is wonderful because in Remake the World, there's a little profile on the Pennsylvania community that gave like a community, whatever it's called, agreement that their natural environment had its own rights, and how they were battling the gas company that wanted to frack waste underneath their community. And they're this tiny rural county with no big firepower, and that's what they came up with. And they were fighting the good fight. And I thought, legal fictions, exactly. Corporations are taking over, and they're just legal fictions. So if we can't give rights to the natural world that actually exists and is there, like, give me a break. I thought that was just a really good parallel and biblioserendipitous. The Powell memo, which I mentioned, strategy for corporations to use money to control the government. The financial switch explained. So one of the core messages from this book was about what relates to the revolt of the elites that I talked about with Devin. And that book talks about how the elites have basically withdrawn from the social contract. And here he's saying, yeah, the elites withdrew because they used to pay taxes. They used to have a high marginal tax rate in the 50s and 60s. And then when it came down, they put that money into the bond market instead. And that means that the money is lent to the government and they get interest on it. And so instead of paying taxes to pay for the services that we're all using and putting it in the common pot, they are lending money and getting high returns on it. So instead of paying in, they're getting paid, which is the financial switcheroo that I think we don't realize. Yeah. So that was really simply explained. He talks about cultural populism with the Tea Party movement versus economic populism with the Occupy movement. Sort of defines the differences there, which was interesting and important. He echoes my own feeling that mental health and anxiety are not necessarily disorders, but the big blooming of them, I think, mainly is a rational response to a disordered modernity. So when I think, well, we all have anxiety these days, what's that about? Well, it's not because we've all caught a virus of anxiety. It's because modern society is just throwing so much ape shit at us that, like, we can't deal with it. And our immune response is constant vigilance, which exhibits or manifests as anxiety, bad mental health. So he echoed that, and I felt a little less alone in that opinion. All right, so the final books. Coming Up Short was just a really good read. He narrates it himself if you're interested in the audiobook. But yeah. Very quickly to say, this one was disappointing. I was looking for a sustainable cookbook. This one by Abby Aspen, Glenn Cross, and Sav Moore. They never explain how to pronounce that. And Abby Aspen is a strange word. They never say anything about the origins or like backgrounds. So it just felt very weird. Like, it's all equipment tips, shortcuts without sort of a core philosophy or ethos, and there's just tons of typos. So I was just very disappointed with that book, and we'll just leave it at that. And then finally, we end with a winner, which is Writing Mr. Wrong, which is a romance, which is the last thing that I read, and I just Loved it. So, yeah, it's a romance by Kelly Armstrong. She's Canadian, so it's CanLit if anyone is looking. Let's see. It's a hockey romance, if you can see on the cover there. Let me make it a little bigger. It's about an author who uses a high school asshole who humiliated her as the inspiration for this alpha romance hero to get her debut published. It works, and then they're, flung back together, and she's like, "Oh dear God, not again." So I found this to be a delight. I loved their internal monologues because it exposed both a lot of humor of the situation as well as the learning that was going on. He's learning how not to be an asshole, and she's like wringing her hands about, do I give him another chance? It was just the best, like so funny, so lovely. I haven't read Kelly Armstrong before, but now I definitely want to because, yeah, set in Vancouver, talking about hockey, but not too much because I don't know anything about hockey. And just, watching all those mistakes be made that I've seen in real life, it's just very realistic and real life sort of relationship hazards that were sensitively handled. Let's say that. So really, really enjoyed that and would highly recommend. And that is my 16th book. So we have covered all the books today. Is that even legal? Is what? Which part? Cat Paw, you're gonna have to remind me. Hi, Gareth. Big hugs. Big hugs. Gareth just had an announcement video yesterday, which was really great. It was really long, and he explains a lot of his like career mileposts and goals and thoughts, and I loved it. So I encourage everyone to go check it out and get on board with the new announcement. And yes, so now I've gotten all my books done. We're good. I can just chat for another 10 minutes because, we're almost 2 hours. So why not go for the full 2 hours? Is that even legal? Oh, yeah. Yeah, because Congress dropped the marginal tax rate, so they pay less taxes. They gave them loopholes to avoid paying taxes, and so they get more money. What are they gonna do with that money? Well, they're gonna put it in the market products that are available to them, and the highest returning would be the bond market. Yeah. Of course, Gareth. And I put in a little comment about collabs, so maybe you'll see us on each other's campaigns. We'll say that. Okay. I fear I may have gone a little far on my little wobbly recovering voice. I know. I know. So we're going to wrap this up and just say I love most of these books. I encourage you to tell me your opinions. And if you're on Team Rewatch, which one was your favorite? Which one did it look like I loved the most? Which one, according to the enthusiasm meter? What do you think? Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. And I hope you guys are reading good things, using your libraries, using your resources, escaping into comfort if you need it, or boning up on nonfiction if you're into that at the moment. But whatever it is, take care of yourselves and diversify that reading shelf. And you'll hear about that more later for our coming up events. I'm so excited. All right. Bye, everybody. Later, Gator.